They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, and pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with a story about 20 years before, and a younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. I started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and I had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. He concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. promises. Through His Word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Believe upon His promises.
Welcome, my name is Mark Wallace, this is True North Studio, and today our topic is our positive to negative ratio. Well, the other day I watched a young mother squat down, put her hands on her son's shoulders, and firmly she was telling her red-faced, fist clenching, almost vibrating angry child, use your words, use your words. She talked him down from physically acting out his anger on one of his siblings, and then he ran off with a smile. Well, she knew he had to learn to use his words before he took action. And we adults are supposed to be better at using our words than a 5-year-old child. So what about the words you tell yourself over and over every day, day after day? Are those words building you up, or are they putting you down? Would you talk to your friends the same way that you talk to yourself? Well, I sincerely hope not. You know, use your own words wisely. Oh, and be careful with other people's words too. Even other people's words can change things in our hearts. When I was 15, I had a '69 Chevy and a girlfriend, air quotes, who was almost 20. I know. And when I met her college-age brother, it was not Josephine. Okay, when I met her college-age brother, he glanced me up and down, and right off the bat, he told me, he said, "Boy, your arms are too long." And it was sort of a weird thing to say the first time you meet somebody. But I thought, oh well, you know, I didn't know him, so I really didn't care, and I didn't think much about his words. But his words somehow changed me, because the next day I was walking around in the school with my hands in my pocket, and so nobody would notice my too long arms. Now, before that day, I'd never even thought about my arms, much less their length. I was 15. We just thought about girls and cars, or cars and girls. That was about it. You know, and so this idiot changed my thinking about myself, and it sort of pissed me off. Now I had to talk myself through this long arm issue. You know, I wondered, was I a Neanderthal throwback? A missing link? A caveman? A knuckle dragger? You know, well, I went to my wise beyond his years older brother, older by 14 months. He was 16. And I told him what that guy had said to me about my arm length. And now even at 16, my brother Brett should have held a Sherlock Holmes style pipe and stroked his imaginary gray psychologist beard. And this guy seemed to know everything that I didn't. Well, Brett told me to stand up against the wall, and he had me stretch out my arms, and he measured my wingspan with Mom's yardstick. And he said, with the authority of a professor, that a person's arm span should just about be equal to one's height. So if you're 6'1", your arm span should be just about 6'1". Well, mine was pretty close. I wondered, how did he know this stuff? Now, my brother's words informed me that my arms weren't freakishly long, but maybe my girlfriend's brother's arms were freakishly short. Anyway, I believed what my brother said, and my arms were once again set free. I trusted my brother's words and finished my teen years without a second thought about arm length. John 8:32 says, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Words are powerful. One person's words turn me inward, and another person's words set me free. Words of fear, strife, envy, bitterness wake up our primal lizard brain, and they send warning signals to our inner caveman, slowing down cognitive function and causing us to react, sometimes violently, like a red-faced child. But words of love, light, and peace light up the frontal lobe of our brains and promote clear, hopeful, forward thinking, like learning that your arms are normal length. Words are by far the most powerful things on earth, and we can use this force to encourage or to destroy. Words open hearts, free souls, bless friends, and sidestep ignorance. Words have the energy to heal or to hurt, to help or to hinder, to humiliate or to add hope. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." See, choose words of life. Tell yourself, I'm loved. I am wise. My spiritual perception is spot on. I can easily make choices that create abundance. I'm powerful beyond measure because I have the Spirit of the living God. My life impacts the world with positive footprints. Even in darkness, I'm constantly aware of the light. God lovingly guides me to the open doors that I never saw before, and He provides all that I need for my amazing journey through life. So tell yourself that. You know, Psalm 107:20 says, "And He sent His word and healed them and delivered them from their destructions." He sent His word and healed us. There's power in His word. You know, God's words heal, they deliver, they build us up. Use His words, folks, because they work. Proverbs 25:11 from the CEV says, "The right word at the right time is like precious gold set in silver." Choose your words and then use your words. A child has to be trained to use his words and not just lash out like a wounded caveman. Back in the 70s, I was delivering an oven to a bakery in the Bowery of New York City. Back then, the Bowery was not a hip place like it is today. Back then, it was this old drunk men who sat side by side on the sidewalk with their backs up against a littered building, and they would each take turns. These old guys would take turns ridiculing the people who walked past. And one bald old man turned red as he screamed at me when I walked past carrying that oven, and I could feel his warm spittle spray me. And he said, "Boy, you're nothing. You're nobody. When you were sucking rags, I was fighting for my country." Well, I felt bad that a World War II veteran had succumbed to his inner demons. But I didn't take his words to heart because I didn't know him. Again, I didn't care. To me, he was just a lost man, a red-faced drunk, and he was bitter. And we know that doesn't get anybody anywhere. Now, if someone I loved told me that, maybe one of you, if you told me that, it might affect me differently. I may put my hands back in my pockets, but I know enough now to consider the source. Like Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." I mean, that's where our battle comes from. It's not from each other, not from red-faced old drunks on the street. It always comes from the enemy. Always consider the source of any negative. I don't think you heard me. Always consider the source of any negative. It's important to know where it comes from. No matter who it's coming from, the original source is never that person. It's not your brother, your sister, your mother, your dad. your spouse. You see, we still need to keep our heads on straight and don't waste our emotions. 1 Corinthians 9:26 from the GNT says, "That is why I run straight for the finish line, and that's why I am a boxer who does not waste his punches." You know, focus on who you are and what you want, and don't waste time thinking about what you don't have. Don't waste time thinking about what you don't want and don't want to be. Focus on what you do want. The world's going to try to drag you down, folks. Hebrews 11:3 says, "Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God." The worlds were framed by the Word of God, so that the things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. That's pretty big. The worlds were framed. All the universe is framed by the Word of God. Words are what spun up this entire universe in the first place. And they're what keep our personal universes spinning. Let's use our words wisely. Now, the positive-negative ratio. Now, I've seen countless studies on the amount of positive words it takes to overpower a negative. Some say it takes 2 positive to overpower just 1 negative, while others say it takes 3. You know, and there's one prominent psychologist that said it takes 5 positives to overpower each single negative. Well, one research team went as far as setting the positive to negative ratio. Now, how they did this, I really don't know, but it's funny. They set the positive negative ratio, in other words, how many positive words we need to counteract 1 negative, at 2.9013 to 1. Then they rounded it up to 3.1. You know, I mean, why not, right? They rounded up to 3.1, and they said, the 3.1 positivity ratio may well be the magic number in human psychology. That's from Barbara Fredrickson, PhD. Okay, so 3.1, that's a big number. It's going to come back in a second. And you're going to find that these ratios are not random, that they're proven, and they will work for you. The ratios are different for different people in different situations, but you need to find a number that works for you. And what I mean by that, when you get hit with a negative, whether it's you did it to yourself or someone else did it, how many positives does it take for you to overcome that? And if you're not overcoming it, it's you're not putting enough positives in there or not putting enough word on. So how many positive words are needed for you to beat down 1 negative in your life, in your marriage, at your job? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 5? Ecclesiastes 4:11 and 12 says, "Again, if 2 lie together, they can have heat. But how can 1 be warm alone? And if 1 prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a 3-fold cord is not quickly broken." And most ropes, if you look at them, if you took them apart, it's 3 separate strands that are spun together, and it makes a strong rope. A 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. You see, so sometimes that 3-to-1 ratio is important. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. So this is a 1-to-1 positive to negative ratio. I'm going to go through all these that these scientists say. So this is a 1-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Now, it's important to note that nobody believes in the 1-to-1 positive negative ratio. Not even God. 1 positive quote never outweighs 1 negative. It seems like they should, but they don't. It seems like it. It seems like you counteract the positive with the negative. But it really doesn't work that way with human nature. And we'll see that God did not design us to be that way. In fact, He did not design the universe nor all His angels to think that same way. This is going to blow your mind in a minute. See, it takes a lot more positives to overpower 1 negative. And every single human is going to be a little bit different. Now, there's no such thing as a 1-to-1 ratio. You know, 1 positive defeating 1 negative. 1 is better than none, but 1 will not sustain you for very long. The only human and the only being to ever go toe-to-toe with the devil, matching wits, matching words, was Jesus. And He needed to be ministered to after the encounter. You remember that when He went to the wilderness? So he went 1-to-1. But afterwards, angels had to come and minister to him. That's how devious and how devastating the devil is. It's not what you think. It's not a guy in a red suit with a pointy tail. This is one powerful being. You know, Matthew 4:11 states, "Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him." Okay, so other than Jesus in his grueling wilderness test, there are no verses to back up a 1-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Even that verse showed that Jesus needed help. Now we're going to go to the 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio. And I call this the angel ratio. And this is something I call the angel ratio, and it's a 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Think 3 archangels, Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer. 2 are good and 1 is bad. 2 are on our side, 1 is against us. Think the 2-to-1 ratio. I think the 2-to-1 ratio is the lowest sustainable ratio in the entire universe. 2-to-1 is as low as it gets. You get hit with 1 negative, you got to hit it with at least 2 positives. Now, we have more positives on our side than the devil has on his. We have twice as many. We have twice as many good angels as bad angels. So God already set it up where there's twice as much good working for you than the 1/3 that's working against you. You have 2/3 for, 1/3 against. That's life, folks. So spiritually, we need at least double the positives for every single negative. Now here's a fun fact to know and tell. 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio is even necessary for perfect spiritual beings like God's angels. We mortals may need more, but this was the perfect ratio for spiritual beings. You know, during the night, the enemy had quietly surrounded the city where a man of God named Elijah was, and his helper was with him. And so the city was totally encompassed by enemy troops. And the young man got up in the morning, and he went outside the city wall to do his business, because that's where people did their business. And he noticed an entire enemy army with horses and chariots was encamped just outside his city. They were ready to attack. He freaked, and he ran back to his house, and he told Elijah what he saw. You see, and then the man of God told the young man what to do, and he asked God to show him something. And the young man's eyes were opened. We'll get to this. We'll read this in just a second, but I think you're going to get blessed. You see, the young man's eyes a situation, and it looked pretty bleak. I mean, if your city was surrounded by enemy, whatever the enemy would be, okay, it would be weird, okay? They had their guns and, tanks and all that stuff. You see, it'd be a deadly, helpless feeling. But I want you to notice the ratio of good to bad that the man of God saw and his helper missed. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 16 and 17 from the JUB. And it says, "And he answered, Fear not, for those that are with us are more than those that are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horsemen and chariots of fire round about Elisha." Now, in order to see that balance of power, that it's really on your side, no matter what it seems or feels like, we must find a way to reduce our level of fear. Because he had to reduce his fear to be able to see what God wanted him to see. Fear binds and fear blinds our spirituality. See, God was showing the young man that they had more of God's elite troops fighting for them, protecting them, than they had fighting against them. And we're going to see that in a moment that the ratio is even better for us. So I ask you, what problems do you have that seem bleak, helpless, and deadly? You know, is it health? Is it your job? You know, is it a move that you're making into the unknown? You see, we all have to find a way to see and to know that there's far more positives, more power, more deliverance on our side than it seems to our senses. The 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio is the spiritual battle. It is a spiritual battle. And we will always have more good on our side than there are negatives against us. That is the angel ratio. And the sooner we see that our battle is always spiritual, the easier it's going to be to see our protection and deliverance alive in the spiritual realm too. Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." We read that earlier, but it's a great verse. So let's look at another great verse to show us the need for at least 2-to-1 positive to negative interactions. And this was spoken and written by Jesus' younger half-brother, Jude. Jude 1:9. "Yet Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, and durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, The Lord rebuke thee." Now that verse finally makes sense to me. You know, not the part about where God hid Moses' body, because you're never going to find, if the angels don't know, you're not going to know, okay? But what I noticed was that Michael, you know, the most powerful warrior in the entire universe, would not even get into a verbal battle against the devil without his sidekick Gabriel. Now, do you get that? Michael said, "The Lord rebuke thee." But Michael did not get after it with the devil. And he was designed to be the greatest warrior alive. So there's some, that dude has some power. You see, even the greatest combatant in the world, the angel who was designed from the ground up to be a warrior for God and for us, God's people, you know, Michael knew he needed backup when dealing with the devil. And folks, you do too. You do too. He was smart enough to remember the angel ratio, that spiritually when dealing with the devil, we all need a 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio. The angel ratio is a 2-to-1 positive to negative ratio. 2-to-1 is how the angels roll. And we need even better odds. Now we're going to go into what's called the 3-to-1 positive to human ratio. Excuse me, positive to negative ratio. I call it the human ratio. The human ratio. 3-to-1 positive to negative ratio is the human ratio. And you guys are asking me, why is he talking about this stuff? And the reason is because it takes all of us more positives than we think to overpower a negative situation or a negative thought that we've told ourselves. Negatives have been part of life since the long, slow decline and fall of Lucifer. And we humans are designed to function best in a 3-to-1 positive to negative environment, at least for now. At least as long as we're the corporeal, sentient thinking beings. You know, it's wise to remember that there's always more good on our side than there are negatives stacked up against us. 2 Chronicles 32:7 says that. Now, God knew that negatives would have a greater impact on us. I'm going to say it again. God knew that negatives would have a greater impact on us humans than positives, so he doubled the positives. We saw that with the 2-to-1, with the angel ratio. The Apostle Paul knew this and reminded the now 40-something-year-old Timothy an example of the 3-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Now we've jumped to 3-to-1. By 64 AD, Timothy was middle-aged. He'd given his entire life to serve God and to serve the believers and to travel with Paul. He'd been all over the known world. He'd seen signs, miracles, and wonders by the ton. You see, the Bible never mentions that he had a family, never mentions that he had a home. Christians were once again being hunted and murdered publicly at that time. And most of the believers he knew and loved were afraid to call themselves Christians anymore for fear of public ridicule or death. Read 2 Timothy 1:15, 3:1, and 4:3. Paul reminds Timothy, for God has not given us a spirit of fear or cowardice, but the power, one, of love, two, and of a sound mind, three. That's 2 Timothy 1:7. Power, love, sound mind is how you get over fear. And power means miraculous power. It doesn't just mean a big muscle. It means God's power. Love means the love of God, God's love. And a sound mind means a mind focused on the Word. It's pretty cool. So that's 3-1 right there. Paul shifted. You see it in other places in the Bible too. You got hope, love, and faith, right? That is the pure, uncut 3-1 ratio that beats fear. Spiritual power, pure love, and godly thoughts. Almost all therapists who practice the art of positive psychology firmly believe in the 3-1 positive to negative ratio. They stake their reputations and their counseling careers on it. The 3-1 is huge, folks. As I said earlier, the 3-1 positivity ratio may be a magic number in human psychology, from Barbara Fredrickson, PhD. We've all heard that evil men and seducers wax worse and worse. 2 Timothy 3:13. See, the people of this fine world are not getting better. We're not getting better. You see, it says that it's waxing worse and worse. See, God has us covered. Professor Ray Baumeister of Florida State University co-authored a book titled "Bad is Stronger Than Good." Now, I didn't like that title, so I checked into it. He says that it's just human nature to allow negatives to overpower positives. Now, you think about that. Every scar that you have on your body, you can probably remember. But not every good thing that's ever happened to you. You see, people, and we were designed that way to keep us alive, so that we are afraid of saber-toothed tigers, or, I'm back to my caveman days, I guess, So, we are afraid of people we don't know. You walk into a different neighborhood, it feels weird, it feels uncomfortable, and you brace yourself. You walk differently, you think differently, you're more alert. Well, that's a type of fear, but it's not a bad fear. It keeps you alive. People say certain things so you remember. You eat a berry, it makes you sick, no touch again. Bad berry, So, negatives make a big impression. So bad emotions, bad parents, and bad feedback have more impact than good ones. Bad impressions and bad stereotypes are quicker to form and more resistant to disconfirmation than good ones. That was a quote from him. See, what Professor Baumeister was saying is it takes a lot more effort to stop a negative thought than it does for a negative thought. It takes a lot more effort to stop a negative thought, with a positive thought than it does for a negative thought to stop a positive thought. And it's really true. It's really true. You see, I know it's not fair, and I'm sorry, you see, and I know it doesn't make sense. Tough luck, because light dispels darkness, we think, well, light dispels darkness. So any darkness, a little bit of light will get rid of it. The one match will light up a dark room. We're not talking about darkness. Just means the absence of light. It's like an empty head, okay? That's darkness. It's nothing. Light is something. See, darkness is the absence of light. It's just a void. You see, that's why God set up the 3-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Now here's a mind blower. in that Jesus calls himself the bright and morning star, Revelation 22:16, and Lucifer before his fall was called the son of the morning, Isaiah 14:12, Jesus now may be filling the much needed role that Lucifer abandoned. I'm not going to repeat it, but they both have the same names by God. That makes, now listen to this, this is fun. That makes Gabriel, Michael, and Jesus, that's 2 archangels and 1 Christ against 1 devil. Now it's 3-1. Since Christ rose from the dead and ascended, now spiritually it's 3-1. And it's, for the last 2,000 years, it's been a 3-1 ratio spiritually, even spiritually. You see, when Jesus rose from the dead and ascended, and we were given the gift of Holy Spirit, we have at least a 3-1 positive to negative ratio, maybe more. And as the wise Solomon once said, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Now, knowing that greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world, 1 John 4:4 probably makes more sense to you now. You see, 3 against 1 is pretty darn good odds. How would you like to be in a fight against 3? How would you like to be one of the 3 against 1? That's more like it, right? You are. You are. With you, maybe it's 4-1, right? You, Gabriel, Michael, Jesus. 3 against 1 is pretty good odds. The 3-1 positive to negative ratio is the minimum we humans need to beat back the negatives of life. Let's use the 3-1 positivity ratio. Let's pile on 3 times more positive against every single negative. Folks, it will work. Now, 5-1 positive to negative ratio. We just skipped 4. I mentioned 4, but we're going to skip it. 5-1 positive to negative ratio. And this is termed the magic ratio. And there's no biblical precedent for this one, okay? I just like it. And now we jump up 2 notches, and we go from 3-1 to a 5-1 positive to negative ratio. Now maybe it's overkill. Maybe it's genius. Well, let's see. Well, one psychologist puts the positive to negative ratio at 5-1. Dr. John Gottman says that the magic ratio is 5-1. That means for every negative interaction during a disagreement, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions. Usually people don't even realize it. If you're in a good relationship, you are already doing this, folks. Whether it's, and let's say the altercation or the fight's about you're not having enough sex. Or there's clothes on the floor all the time, or you're spending too much money, or you're working too late, or the toilet seat is in the wrong position. There will be disagreements in every marriage, right? Except for yours, you see. And so to help us understand the difference between happy and unhappy couples, Dr. Gottman and Robert Levinson began studying couples in the 1970s. And they asked couples to try to resolve some conflict they were having in their relationship in a 15-minute span. And they were watched and recorded. So how would you like to have one of your arguments recorded and all that? So they watched many, many couples. And they watched them for 15 minutes, how they interacted. And after carefully studying the videotapes, back when they had videotapes, they were able to predict which couples would stay together and which would divorce. And they had an over 93% accuracy rate. Now, that's pretty good odds, right? Oh, yeah. What they discovered was simple. The difference between a happy and unhappy couple is the balance between the positive and negative interactions during arguments. And they saw that there is a very specific ratio that enhances the love, and they call it the magic ratio. Now, Gottman's magic ratio is 5-to-1. For every negative word or negative interaction, successful couples always included 5 positive communications or actions. Now, the couples could argue. We all do. But they also would laugh, and they would tease, and they would touch, and they would smile, and they would show affection, and they would connect, and they would lean forward, and they would show that they were listening. Those are all positives, right? Okay? And so those are they weren't necessarily 5 positive words, but they're 5 positive things that these young couples did. Now, on the other hand, unhappy couples tend to have fewer of those positive interactions and simply focus on the negative at hand. It's just business. And a low positive to negative ratio is unhealthy and can indicate a couple is teetering on the edge of divorce. After about 10 years, the researchers were over 90% right on which couples stayed together and which separated. That's why I'm bringing up the magic ratio. Because we all have a relationship. Even if you're not married, you have a relationship with your kids, with your parents, with your workmates. And it's all in the body language, the smile, the touch, the not rolling the eyes, not aggressive posture, and especially, not using those words, you see. Now, I don't have any verses to back up the 5-to-1 ratio, and I apologize, okay? But the science is in. And if you want to stay married or have a better relationship with your friend or brother or sister or your lover, then be 5 times more positive than you are negative. And that could be body language too. That's the 5-to-1 magic ratio. So now, how do we improve our ratios? Now, I'm not sure what ratio each of you needs, or what I need all the time. Every person in every situation is different. Now, I do know that it takes far more positive to overpower a single negative than it does the other way around. Again, I don't know why. It seems like one positive should overpower 1,000 negatives, but it doesn't work that way for us humans. It takes 2, 3, 5 more positive actions or words than it does negatives. You ever tried to counsel somebody? You don't just say one little word. You meet with them and meet with them and meet with them and meet with them and meet with them. Just to get them to do one stupid thing. One wonderful thing. Excuse me. That being said, the 1-to-1 ratio is never enough. The 1-to-1, one positive, one negative, is not going to work. It never has worked. God doesn't expect it to work. It won't work. Angels use the 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times the positive for every negative. This won't work for us either, unless you happen to be an angel. Now, the entire Bible and all positive psychology is full of the 3-to-1 ratio examples. Love, power, sound mind. They beat fear, 2 Timothy 1:7. The greatest way to think is with hope, faith, and love. Love being the greatest, 1 Corinthians 13. The 5-to-1 magic ratio is our relationship bonus. And you and I need to work out our own perfect ratio that's going to be unique to us. But it will be around 3-to-1 to 5-to-1 positive to negative ratio. Now, the first time I remember having to deal with my mind after being verbally attacked by an adult whom I didn't know was when I was in the 4th grade. And my family had just moved to Japan and was living in a temporary Air Force housing area near Tokyo called Fuchu. And we always moved around Christmas time. And so we were always the new kids in school in the middle of a year. And so right after Christmas break, the principal walked me into my new classroom, and all eyes were on me. And I was handed off to my new teacher, and the principal left. And the teacher looked me up and down and said to the entire class and me in a loud, angry voice, "Oh no, another redhead!" Now, this lady must have had some bad experiences with redheads in her past. But even at 9 years old, I knew she was out of place with that comment. It's a good thing I didn't care much about what adults said at that time in my life, or her words might have really hurt me. See, at that time, her words were just noise. Just another adult. But I probably lived up to her expectations of me. The woman hated me from the moment she saw me, and nobody hates me.
No.
You know, to add insult to injury, I sat in my newly assigned seat, and a pencil rolled off my new seat-desk combo, and I leaned over to get it, and my desk tipped over, hit the floor with a crash, and the whole class erupted in laughter. I straightened my little glasses, mussed up my red hair, and just smiled. It was on. You know, let's just say she was not my favorite teacher. Now, a few times that day I had to drive my mind to think about what I liked about myself to counter her negativity. I remember that. I had to tell myself how much the GIs used to love me for my red hair. They'd grab me and rub my head. "Son, come here and give me some good luck." Remember I told you I felt like I was just spreading the love, you see? But she didn't feel like I was spreading the love. And so here's a few tips to increase your positive to negative ratios. We're always going to have negative things thrown at us. And the worst are going to come from the people closest to you. Okay, you got to understand that. And my wife and I tried to write down as quick as possible this morning the ways that we help ourselves and try to help others combat negatives. And these may help you improve your positive to negative ratio. And this is a very simple list. This is not a psychologist list. I did look at all them, and they were like, here's 18 steps to a happy marriage. I want one. You know, I want 3. You know, I can't handle 18. You know, and they're all this crazy stuff, okay? So this is improving your personal ratio. This is the first one. So, and I'm just going to say, like self-talk. Philippians 4:8, you know, be aware of what you say to yourself. Catch yourself as much as you can and change your internal monologue. If you're used to calling yourself stupid or idiot or klutz, stop it! Treat yourself at least as good as you treat your best friend. Think about what you're telling yourself, okay? And the next thing would be the dust off. That's what I call it. Now, this is for our personal selves. The dust off. This is Matthew 10:14. Sometimes removing yourself from the situation works best. You ever had to walk out of a room? You see, be careful what you allow into your heads and bodies. And if friends or family or co-workers try to hold you back, avoid them for a while. 1 Corinthians 15:33 tells us that. If you put yourself down because you keep eating wrong, find a way to limit your food choices. Dust it off. Shake it off. Find a way to limit. Don't bring them into your house. Don't go to that restaurant. Stop drinking that sugary drink. You know the thing. You get it. Now the next one is forgive yourself. Cast your cares on God. He cares for you, right? 1 Peter 5:7. God does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities. Psalm 103:10. You see, there's no condemnation, right? Doesn't it say that in Romans 8:1? There's no condemnation to you. God does not condemn you. So you might as well forgive yourself. You might as well forgive yourself. See, God's forgiven you. Plus, you can't do anything about the stupid things you did in your past, right? Red hair, long arms, you know. Can't do anything about it sometimes. So forgive yourself. Forgive others. Now here's improving your relationship ratio. Now those are just simple things. We know those things, but they work. Now here's improving your relationship. One is don't dredge up the past. Don't dredge up the other person's past. Deal with the now. Keep your arguments on the present. If you're in an argument, deal with what you're dealing with now. And when people start bringing up things from the past, all it is a distraction because they're getting nervous. So don't get so mad at them. Just point it out. Hey, you're bringing it up because you're nervous or afraid. I get it. Okay, let's deal with my long arms. No. Let's deal with my red hair. Let's deal with whatever problem's at hand, right? The underwear that I never make it all the way into the basket, or the seat that never seems to go all the way down, you know. And here's the next thing. Deal with things as soon as possible. And the Bible says, be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. Ephesians 4:26. You know, if you want to try to deal with it today if you can. You know, use positive body language. Smile, react, listen. Oh wait, that's another one. The next one is use positive body language. And this is important. And I think girls are much better at this than guys usually. Okay? But smile when somebody's talking to you. React to them. Oh, you know, nod, listen, acknowledge, touch, you know, have eye contact. Don't you ladies like that? You see, maybe lean in and listen. You see, it's all good. Maybe women have to sit next to a guy in a car. You want to talk to a guy? Go for a car ride. They'll tell you everything. Guys love to talk to you when they're not looking at you. They like to look out this way and you look out that way and talk. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I do this when I counsel people all the time. You always sit right across from a woman and you always sit next to a guy. And it works. But enough on that. Now the next one is be kind. Be kind. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Ephesians 4:32. You know, tell them what you love about them often. You can even say it in a way to guys where you don't sound gay. I don't know if I can say that anymore, but you know, you can tell a guy what you like about it. That's a cool shirt, man. I like that hat. Nice truck. You know, I mean, whatever. I mean, say more positives than negatives. Okay? And never use a joke at their expense unless you know they like that kind of teasing. And you got to be able to read somebody, right? If somebody doesn't like to be teased, don't tease them. You know, why pull a dog's ear? You know? And tell others what you think of it and keep it positive the best you can. You see? And now, here's a good one. Shut up at times. Zip it. You know, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thy heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore, let thy words be few. Ecclesiastes 5:2. Okay, let your words be few. See, listen more than you talk. 2 ears, 1 mouth kind of thing. You see, a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. Now I need a pipe and a beard when I say that one, right? A wise man uttereth all his mind, but a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth it in till afterwards. See, I can't even say it right. Proverbs 29:11. And here's another one. Forgive them. This is good for the soul. A lot of forgiveness is just for you. Sometimes people don't want to be forgiven. They don't care. You know, just like forgiving yourself above. And here's another one. And this is really the last one I'm going to say is sometimes you need a mediator. Get a mediator. At times we need someone else to talk to who's not so close to the situation. And there's nothing shameful about that. Humans have done this since there were humans. You see, get a counselor sometimes, a good minister who loves you and won't use you as a good example during their teachings. Some of you have had that happen. Don't go to that person. You see, a therapist is good. In the Bible, they called these people daysmen. Read Job 9:33. They were respected people who sat at the city gate and offered advice to those who came into them. There's no shame. There's no shame in talking to a trusted person. No shame. You might have an uncle, an aunt, a friend, a neighbor. So improving your relationship with God ratio. Now here's the third one. The first one was improving your own, your personal. Next was your relationship. And now real quickly, improving your relationship with God. And the first one is to trust His Word. And trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Believe that God will supply your every need. Philippians 3:5. But 4:19. I'm sorry. And be thankful. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to the which also you are called in one body, and be thankful. Colossians 3:15. Recount your many blessings. Remember your many, many miracles. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, good measure, shaken together and running over, shall men heap into your bosom. Luke 6:38, I think. Transform yourself by transforming the words you allow into your heads. Use your words wisely. Romans 12:2. Just like that mom said, use your words. And she calmed the kid down. We have to calm ourselves down. We have to get rid of the negatives. If you're an angel, if any of you out there listening to me are angels, then you can counter one negative with two positives. That is the angel ratio. The rest of us need at least 3. You see, the rest of us need, and if you're a human, then it's at least 3-to-1 positives to every negative, the human ratio. Now, if you want a great relationship, a wonderful love life, then use the 5-to-1 magic ratio. Okay? Find a ratio that works for you. Improve your positive to negative ratio, and you will improve your life, your relationship with others, and your relationship with God. I love you all. God bless you.